What up, everybody? Hi, this is Anna Achimowicz back with you. Here. Again, it's beautiful all of Europe, and we just came back after a small little break. I've been busy with other things. I had a premiere of my Rebel Crush project. I did a couple of fashion shoots. I've been busy, to say the least. But the other person that is going to join me today in a fabulous conversation and discussion, Rudy Sarzo himself, that does not need any introduction. He is sure busy, and for decades and decades right now. And since we're pretty much celebrating World Podcast Day, and if you're tuning in with us on all of your favorite social media, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, make sure to subscribe to all of them that support the show, and of course, stay up to date with everything that we're doing. And World Podcast Day is 5th of September, but I figured I would bring someone super fun first. So the month 14th, almost correct. So I'm going to take a sip of coffee as always so that you guys do the honors, reshare the chat, reshare our conversation, either from the Rock Dance Theater TV channel or anywhere else with your friends and foes. Until then, I will see you with my guest right after this sip of coffee. So, ladies and gentlemen, Rudy Sarzo, buenos dias.
Good morning, Anna. Buenos dias. As a matter of fact, I just launched with a partner of mine, the luxury coffee chef, a Cuban café cubano, Cuban coffee.
It's just so that qué rico, qué bueno. I'm a coffee addict, so I need information.
Yeah, it's basically, I'm friends with him, and then we, for a few years now, and then we thought about, hey, how would you like to, work together to create this Cuban coffee? Because one of my last memories of actually living in Cuba, because I was born there, and was the coffee, and then ever since I have never been able to taste until now that we have our own blend of coffee, Café Cubano. It's called Café Havana. And you can actually Instagram, and I do some posts once in a while. We just did a soft launch last week about it, and we're just building up the brand and so on. But it's reminiscent of my memories of drinking coffee in Cuba. Which is very interesting because first of all, it was grown there and of course roasted there and everything,
Beautiful.
But that it was at a time I left in 1961. So by 1961, we had this export. Coffee was slowing down, and one of the things that I've learned about coffee through the years, the coffee industry, is that what happens is most of the countries that grow the coffee, they export their best.
That's true. That's the first thing that goes pretty much. Yeah.
Exactly. So if one of the things that traditionally what happened is well, by the time we got to Miami, and we could not get real Cuban coffee, espresso, because of the embargo, all of that going on.
Back in the day. Yeah.
There were, we started getting other sources of what coffee, that was being sold to us as Cuban coffee.
So
when I mean sold
sorry
to
to
us,
interject. Where did you import it then? Where did it come from? Which country?
The what?
The imported one. The imported beans, since you're selling and exporting the Cuban ones.
Well, no, I'm talking about years ago. I mean, the what eventually happened to what is known today as Cuban coffee in the United States. It's so what it's a whole different taste as it was when I was growing up in Cuba, and especially right before the revolution. It was not as pungent. It did not need, or bitter. It did not need as much sugar as if you go to Miami and you order Cuban coffee. It's like they just pour sugar in it because that masks the bitterness.
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah. But what they do is they actually put it into the grounds. and they do the machine. You know, they put it through the espresso machine with the ground with the sugar in the grounds already. You know, and then
Yeah.
that's what the population has grown with as this is what Cuban coffee is. It has a kick to it, kind of
Mm.
like a coffee version of Red Bull, but nevertheless, it's not really the
Oh yeah.
flavorful traditional coffee that was grown in Cuba, and that's what I remember when I left because I left, you know, very young, meaning that I left very much close to what the you know, the in 61 revolution came in 59, so we left like a couple of
Mm.
years after the revolution came in. So there was a real original flavor, a traditional flavor. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't. It did not give you that much of a kick in the head like it does now. So we're going for that flavorful Cuban coffee that I grew up with.
Awesome to reproduce
Yeah,
that. That's awesome. You know what I
yeah.
actually saw? I was on tour 2 weeks ago or a week ago. It literally passed right after I was teaching a masterclass for a company, and I saw a documentary that actually, if you don't know, in 15 years they calculated that coffee beans, the Arabic ones, is gonna completely become extinct because of the pollution, because of the change in atmosphere, changes around the equator, the amount of export, of course, with the plantations. And I was shocked. I panicked. I literally thought, "Oh my God, I need to stockpile my basement with coffee because literally it's gonna be gone a decade and a half." Can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on, you know, show on coffee, but there's other regions of the world that are basically not don't have the same pollution problems that, you know, of course, like you're talking about Arabic. Africa has some really rich coffee, you know, that export coffee, and it's fantastic. I mean, there's major brands like
Yeah,
let's say Starbucks, which is an international brand. They uh, they get that's their resources for coffee beans. Of course, you have South America and
of course.
and the Caribbean. You know, so it's I think there's going to be, yeah, like you were talking, certain regions are going to be affected, but that means that operations are going to be moved to other regions. It might not be, it's not going to be exactly the same Arabica flavor,
Sure
but at
enough.
least it will be
Yeah.
pretty close. Yeah, yeah,
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, well, rock and roll
yeah,
company or rock and roll coffee. It's something so close to basically the whole lifestyle, something for the fans, something to enjoy. And then again, hey, you can basically drink your product while recording music. It's just like you're
yeah,
covered for a lifetime. So tell me, Rudy,
yeah.
if I can ask you, what did you do with your soft release, so called? Was it like a showcase with a little music event around it, or is there something bigger coming up? I'm just asking
Yeah.
because for sure I'm gonna pass that through my social media as an interesting thing, because Rock Dance Theater gravitates around coffee and cool fun things connected to rock, like all things rock basically. So it's gonna be good to
Ye-
know in the calendar.
Yeah, unfortunately, right now because of COVID, we have not been able to do a hard launch or an
Right.
event. It's impossible, especially tasting event where people are going to be drinking
I know. Yeah,
coffee,
mask.
sipping.
Meh.
Yeah, we can't do that, you know, and social distancing and everything. So we will say, okay, we're waiting for when all the COVID restrictions and the pandemic subsides and we go to some kind of new normal, but that at least we can share food and coffee in a eventful environment, not a restaurant, because a restaurant, like let's say here in Los Angeles, there's still social distancing in the restaurant. Once you
Right.
have an event, you're mingling. It's a social event.
Of course, you're supposed to be on top of each other. That's the whole deal.
Exactly, exactly. You're going to be drinking coffee, and we'll probably have some Latin music to go along with it, and people will be dancing and celebrating, and you know all of that going on. That with
Salsa
COVID,
cubana.
yeah, exactly. You know, with COVID, you can't do that. You know,
But we
yeah,
will soon, very soon. Hopefully,
yeah,
it's on the horizon. I mean,
yeah.
everything is so interesting to say the least. I mean, tours are running in parts of the world. There are parts that are still shut down. But, you
Mhm.
know, it's always kind of an idea about deciding how you actually put out your work. How do you put your art out there, or a product, in this
Mhm.
case, coffee,
Mhm.
which is something, of course, that you work on, and it's very
Mhm.
strongly connected to your personality, normally something that speaks of you, but through
Mhm.
a different medium. So it's
Mhm.
quite interesting and challenging how to kind of pursue that dream still, yet
Yeah.
contain your mental sanity and also just keep rocking around the clock, whatever that means.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you put everything into one aspect of consciousness. With music, with me, is consciousness. There's a certain uh, frequency or vibration about myself that this is me in my natural state, and there's certain type of music that resonates with me in the certain, and I'm always in search of more knowledge of how to improve my connection with that vibration that I have,
Of course.
how to connect music with myself, how to become music, which is my goal. Become it. Don't even have to think about it. Don't even have to like go to like, okay, I'm playing this song and I need to connect these chords with the chord tones, and how what shapes do I have. No, once you just close your eyes and everything flows, to get to my goal in life, to get to that deep consciousness of what music is within me, and be able to do that. I'm on the right direction. As a
I
matter of fact,
remember, yeah, I remember us
I
talking. You're there. You're
yeah.
already there. Yeah. It's
Well,
so great because I think, yeah,
I see the light at the end, and
yeah,
I'm going towards it. Yeah,
keep going. Yeah, yeah, that's the
yeah,
proper way. But it's so
yeah.
interesting. I find kind of like knowing you in your work field, of course, and like the numerous bands and people that you've played with, and of course, it's always easier to mention the people that you haven't played with or created music with than the ones that you have. But for me, I kind of find you somehow closer to that already because you are a Cubano. And
Mm,
I realized that Cuban people, Latin people, they have all of that organic already in their DNA, in their blood. Everything is connected with kind of nature and the rhythms and sunrise and sundown and the percussiveness of it, the tranciness of it. Like, I laugh sometimes that
mm,
whatever that means, white people are stiff as a brick. And I know, since I work with the body mainly, I teach as a choreographer.
mm,
So to that extent, I kind of understand, I think, in my perception at least, like
mm,
becoming music, not even being a song or being, as you say, a form of a shape or a chord or
yeah.
whatever. No, it's just like the pure essence of itself. So if I understand it correctly, I think it's kind of, I'm not surprised that that's kind of the whole idea, to become music, period, as an ultimate.
Mm.
Um, hmm. Well,
Yeah,
I don't.
I completely, I'm in, we're on the same parallel with what you just said. But to go a little bit deeper about it, it's the Caribbean, which is where I come from, which is there's a collection of islands. They have different influences. If you go to one of the really fascinates me is the Dominican Republic, Haiti. It's,
Mhm.
it's one island divided by a mountain range. One side is Haiti, which is French, and the other side is Spanish, Dominican Republic. You
Right.
know, but and then the Haitian side faces Cuba, the western side of Cuba, which is mountain ranges. And recently, I was in a rock and roll cruise, and we had to go around it, and that was the closest I've been to Cuba from a
Oh,
ship, from a cruise, looking at these beautiful mountain ranges. You know,
oh wow.
and you have Jamaica, which is British, a British, former British, or still is, maybe is it a British colony? Well,
I think
it's
it's either
Jamaica.
a colony or it belongs to the
Yeah,
empire. Yeah, or it did in the
yeah,
back. Yeah.
yeah. It's part of that. And then you have like you got the Netherlands with Aruba, and so it's like this combination, and Cuba happened to be basically Spanish. Spanish. We had our native, but our natives that were actually died, that were killed up either by diseases or by murder. When Columbus came to America. And do you know the whole thing about that trip? First of all, they thought it was a suicide mission because it had not been proven
Oh
that
yeah.
the Earth was round. Nobody had done that yet, right?
Yeah,
There
they
was a
thought he would fall over
flat.
the edge.
Yeah,
Yeah, completely.
yeah.
Well,
It
kind
was.
of history comes round. Look, Rudy, what is happening now? Like people do think again. It's this is it.
Yeah,
So
exactly,
it
exactly.
comes full circle.
Yeah. So what happened is nobody wanted to be on, nobody wanted to be on the crew of those three ships, La Niña, La Pinta, y La Santa Maria. Those are the three ships, right? With Columbus, an Italian, not a Spanish, he was given money by the Queen of Spain to go on this mission to explore a quicker route to India. That's all they knew. There's India, but we don't know that there's this, what is known today as, North America, Central America, Caribbean, South
Of course
America,
not.
and so on, right? That was not even in the radar yet, but it did exist. Not in that part of the world, in their consciousness, they have no
In their
idea.
consciousness, yeah, not
Yeah, but the
materialized
natives,
yet.
yeah, the natives of this part of the world, it was, they knew it existed because they were living in it and they were
And they were
creating.
laughing. They were laughing hard until it got
Oh
bloody
yeah,
and
and
yeah,
and,
not so fun.
and I'm going to bring up two things. I'm going to bring up the fact that those three ships were filled with lifers, prisoners, who had, death sentence prisoners, guys that would say, okay, you can either stay here and die, or you can go on this boat and
See
take a
what happens.
chance. See what
Yeah.
happens. So these three ships were filled with criminals. Criminals. That was the crew. Prisoners, right?
That's a rock and roll cruise. I mean,
Oh
murderers,
wow. I
rapists,
mean,
like
yeah,
the
exactly.
edge of humanity.
Yeah, because
Imagine.
it was supposed to
My
be a
God.
suicide mission. Suicide mission. Just
Exactly.
let these guys go out of jail right here. Put them on the ship. See ya. And they get to America. No wonder they wiped out.
And they board. They go on top of the
Yeah,
continent.
yeah.
That's it.
And then imagine the natives seeing these ships all of a sudden arrive with these guys that go, oh my God, they must be somebody. Yeah, they're murderers.
Yeah.
So
You're gonna find out soon enough.
yeah, soon enough. Yeah. So yeah. So basically, that's how the whole thing got started. And but what I was going to get at, that meanwhile you have these European, Spanish, and you have Columbus from Italy with a consciousness of 14, almost the 1500, because this happened in 1492, about 8 years away of entering the 16th century or the
Yeah.
15th century, right? Okay. And there were certain scientific thoughts and advancements, because some people were there was this, no, the earth is round, no, the earth is flat, this stuff, separation between church and science
And wisdom and
and
enlightenment.
wisdom. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, in the Americas as we know it today, this part of the world that I live in,
I love how you air quote America, by the way, because it's all relative. I mean, we know
to
with
the
history,
natives,
Yeah.
to the natives, it wasn't called America.
exactly.
And to our creator, it was just called nothing. It's a planet. It doesn't have a name. You go ahead, you give it a name. The universe did not name planet Earth. It was somebody who came to that conclusion, say this is going to be called planet Earth. It was it.
Catchy title at least.
Yeah, there was no
started.
sign. There was no sign on the planet thousands of years ago that said, "Welcome to planet Earth." No.
Speaking of signs, yes, the rock dance theater signs were not invented back then. You would not know how to get here.
Exactly. I should get a sign. I have no signs.
No, you know what? Actually, it's so funny because a fantasy fair back in June made this, and look, they have this cool logo with the dragon. cracking out
Oh,
from the
wow.
egg. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
And basically, like, that's the motto of the organizer. And to be honest, like me, until this year, I haven't really been so much connected to the fantasy world. My work is always kind of on the edge. You know, it's dark, it's underground, it's mystical,
Yeah.
scary, whatever.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it so crosses over, as we know, with all of these conventions about horror and fiction, and so
Yeah.
there you go. That kind of
Okay.
fiction coming back
Okay.
to flat Earth and round Earth.
So just basically to cap our Christopher Columbus coming to America.
Rock history for right there for you folks.
Okay. So this, you know, and I'm telling you this because this was fundamental teaching with me growing up in Cuba, because this is the history of where I was born. I'm part of this, right? So going a little bit past the Caribbean, which is not real. I mean, actually, let's say Yucatan. Have you been to Mexico? Yucatan is like
I have been to Mexico City.
yeah.
Not
Okay,
further than that.
so Yucatan, you know, uh, there is kind of like it's like the tip right here of Mexico where Cuba meets.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, this is like, yeah, it's like this is upside. Okay, it's like that. Okay, if you're looking at
yeah, I get it.
at the screen and it's upside down. I mean, it's in reverse mirror or whatever. But anyways, the point of Cuba, the western point of Cuba, points towards Yucatan Peninsula, right? Yeah. And that whole area, at the time of 1492, there were advanced native civilizations, right? There, you had the Aztecs that confronted Montezuma when he came over, the explorer. You had the Incas and you got the Mayans, which were more in that region of Yucatan, Cancun area. And if you visit Cancun, one of the first things you do is you go and take a look at the pyramids.
The pyramids, for sure.
Which are exactly, you know, the same shape as the pyramids in Egypt.
In Egypt.
You know, and every other pyramid around the world.
Well. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like we're dealing with advanced spiritual civilizations that had certain knowledge that for some reason, Europeans did not have. They were more caught up in the material, the existence, than the spiritual existence of humanity, you know. And that got even more extreme once Spain decided to grab all the resources out of that region, you know, gold and, you know, tobacco and everything.
Tobacco, all kinds of ores and sources, basically, that you could use
out of South America. Yeah. And I mean, and there were other evolutions about it. And that destroyed the spiritual aspect of those ancient natives. You know, the Incas, the Mayas, the Aztecs. Those civilizations disappeared.
True, and at the same time, there was one very strong reason for it to not really transpire over to Europe, because the opposition to that, of course, centuries kind of later and decades later, was the Christian Catholic Church and the stream, basically, that was burning down knowledge, keeping everything secret, having everything to do with science kept under a lid. Why? Well, of course, we know there are a couple of main aims about that, but it's interesting how certain continents were in connection with others, what were their main aims, and how, as you say, the civilizations that we now know and discover way, way more already discovered heart transplants, discovered travel through time, calendars, astrology, all of that consciousness that is so advanced and so way ahead of time that now all of a sudden everyone is kind of seeing in daylight and in documentaries and having it as actual science, but still as kind of facts that are taboo. I mean, you know, the evidence is there. A lot of it has been destroyed, of course, in architecture, in all of spiritual and religious remnants and writings and engravings and stones, but to me, it's kind of obvious. Funny that you mentioned that with the Mayas, because actually years back, my parents were doing like a karma previous incarnation reading, and my grandmother had Aztecan roots from the side of my father. So that's how far it kind of went, and I was like, whoa, that's pretty intense. So
Wow.
when you think about it, it's like, holy shit. It's not one of the many. It comes full circle, and it goes across time. And funny enough, even before you, Rudy, I had a super fun guest, Patty Negri, which is a white witch of Hollywood. Basically, she's a medium, she's a psychic. She does readings, she does cleanses and magic rituals and ghost investigations and all that. And we were talking also about karma and spirit and reincarnation and all of that. And it's just fascinating. I mean, to me, it's not strange or weird or whatever. It's just kind of obvious that it's there, that realm beyond our cerebral, material understanding and cerebral, physical existence on Earth. So pretty interesting how the facts kind of overlap. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I am, especially speaking about being fascinated about things, I'm fascinated by quantum physics
I
and
remember.
the spirituality about quantum physics. And I think we spoke the last time about my study. This is what I concentrate on, is finding the the quantum mechanics or quantum field
Mm-hmm.
Aspect of music,
Mm-hmm.
because music being a vibration, you know, uh, that coming from a particle, from a material instrument. So it's the reverse, because I think we talked about this the last time. You know, it's everything exists in a waveform,
Mm-hmm.
and then once it's observed, or your consciousness rearranges it to make it into a matter, to material, to a
Yeah.
particle. You
It's
know,
basically a vessel. I mean, a bass in this case would be just a vessel. It's there to transmit
yeah, but it's
and
the opposite.
resonate, but it's kind of the other way around.
The
Yeah.
other way around. Now your consciousness decides to pick up an instrument, whatever it is, that is made out of matter, particle, and resonate a wave, send a wave back into the universe, just like we do with our voice. Our
Yeah.
voice or our thoughts, our emotions, they're all waves, they're all energy based. You know, so you don't even have to pick up an instrument to do that. You could do it on your own. You can do it with your pineal gland. Starts resonating that waveform into the
That's already
universe.
there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's so interesting because we all, I think, and by all, I mean either creators or people or especially musicians, we all constantly have this discussion, where does it come from? Like when a riff falls out and happens, when a song happens, like where does it come from? Is it
Mm,
out there in the universe as a vibration and
mhm.
it channels through you, through your consciousness, your intention, you grab it
Yeah,
because it calls to you and whatnot,
yeah.
or like what is it? What the hell? All of a
Uh,
sudden, bang,
this is my
40 years
perception.
later,
This is my
platinum album.
perception. My perception, and I'm going to use an old standard. Uh, let's say a radio. A radio's off. It's not even plugged into a wall. You got to plug it into the wall or put batteries in it, right? Or a
Right?
crystal radio. It has to have some source that has to activate, but you have to like do it. Like the radio, unless you have it on a auto on, it's not gonna go on unless you turn it on and then you tune in. What do you want to hear? Or maybe it's already tuned into the channel that you always listen to,
Today,
right?
tuning in Rudy Sarzo
Yeah,
on
it's like
FM.
it's like us doing this, and everybody that's watching this right now, or if this is going to be recorded, you can stream it later on. You have to you have to make the effort. The effort. You have to consciously say, "I'm going to do this," right? For
Yeah,
you to have control of it. There's we're surrounded by things. 99% of what happens in our life is other people's perceptions of what the world is all about. That 1% we have control.
mm.
That's it.
Pretty
Unless you
interesting. How
to be.
little you have control, even when you think you do.
Oh
It's
yeah,
amazing.
because I mean, if you go out into the street and you're gonna be surrounded by buildings that were built by somebody else's idea of what we're gonna put here. You're living in a place that was designed by somebody else's vision
Yeah.
where other people should live at, and you decided your 1% said yes, I want to be here. I like this place, right? Or you go to a store that was created by somebody's dream of like, I want to open up a clothing store, and you walk in and you have a 1% decision: am I going to buy something here or not?
So with that understanding, you literally have a split, even like a millionth of a second of right here and right now in time and space that makes you be there downtown in architecture, looking at the sun, for example. You don't have any influence over before and after, just like the actual moment in time,
Yeah, yeah,
period. Because,
yeah,
well, time is a constant. I mean, of course, it's relevant. It's relative in the sense of, yeah, what is time? Well, we know, like, let's say as musicians, we know how time is relative because 1 second sometimes lasts ages. You slip and you fall down the stairs, everything all of a sudden goes into slow-mo, right? Like, boo. And you have like a million decisions to make, like call
yeah,
your mom, like
yeah,
whatever, order a
yeah,
coffee. And
yeah.
it's so incredible
Yeah.
how that can fluctuate as well.
I,
So
I've been in that situation where I got hit by a car on a bicycle. I'm flowing through the air, and it was the longest, probably split second in my life.
mm,
Because then I'm not in my body anymore.
right.
I'm somewhere else getting
You're
help.
looking at the situation from above.
I've,
Yeah.
I've looked at myself so many times in situations that I'm not
Mm.
in my body anymore. And
Was
in
that the
those,
time, Rudy, when you had the motorcycle
no,
accident
there
on the
was
Ozzy tour? Was that
no,
then? You had the
no, no,
big
that
cast on?
no,
No.
no. It was, yeah. The cast was from a bicycle. I was on a bicycle and I was
Okay.
going through a green light, and somebody, hit me. And as I was flying through the air, again, that's slow but I'm not in my body anymore.
Yeah.
I'm in the unified field, getting help from that big consciousness there, because you got to get help.
I know.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, you got to act quick. I mean, one
yeah.
decision, right? Duck, roll, whatever.
It's a critical moment in your life, so you have to go to the source, basically to God, and say, help, get me out of this one,
I
and then you
know.
come back and you deal with it.
Well,
You're back in
there's
your
no
body.
recipe because, like, come on, like as you say, there's an asshole that piles into you on a green light. I mean, what do?
Yeah,
You're kind of in a different mindset. You know
yeah,
exactly. You follow the world. You're by the law, and all of a sudden something interferes with that.
yeah.
But there's a second end to that too, like a second bottom.
That's that 1% that I'm telling you about. That's all I have control.
Okay.
I have control of me going back, getting some spiritual help to move on. It's like, I don't want to die. If I would have said, oh,
No
okay,
one
this is
wants to
it.
die. It's so much fun up here.
Well, yeah, and that's why so many people survive. But the few that say, well, I guess this is it. I'm done. I got hit by a car and I'm flying through the air. And by the time you land and you hit like I did my head, I would have died. But no, how much do you want to live?
Right.
Right. So
How
that's what I
strong
did.
is the intent? Right.
That's right. So that's what I did. I went into the unified field, and
You
you
took a
know
break.
the creator, God, our creator, the very beginning of everything, right? Nobody created that. That was created by itself. So it was never a baby. It was never a baby that the parents say, oh, we're going to name you, Keith, right?
Richards, and you're gonna live
Richard, Keith,
forever.
whatever. Yeah. And you're going to be God. You're
You're
going to
gonna
be,
live
and then,
forever.
so humans put the name God. There are scriptures, there's writings where, according to the writings, God called himself I am. Perfect.
Mhm.
You are. What name is
Yeah,
I am?
that's the
That's right.
ultimate. You
The I
name it.
am. That's
Yeah.
right. So to call it God is traditionally for me to say, okay, I grew up with the name God. But it doesn't mean that I think that the creator is a depiction of a bearded man, like in the Sistine Chapels, right? Adam and God or Keith touching each
Keep
other.
touching, yeah.
You know, the I am. That's what he called himself. I am. That's it. And no, it's this source of unified field in my perception that we come from. And I have enough experiences in my life that that validates personally
Mm,
my perception. And it's only my perception that I
sure.
share with a lot of other people, but I don't expect 100% of the inhabitants of this planet, and I say planet because of
Earth,
what?
cold Earth, since
This rock,
recently.
this rock that's spinning on space, in space,
Yeah,
around the sun. Yeah, basically is what it is, the rock. The third rock
the
from
third
the
rock from the
sun.
sun. Yeah,
That's right.
series from the 90s, I remember.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but what I was getting at also with that 1% of control, what about then, because I'm super curious since we're on that wagon, bandwagon, if you will, of existence. What's your take on destiny and things that are I
Sorry
can
about
mute
that.
I can
So
mute
no,
you
no,
and I can keep
that's all
talking
right.
while you go to your
No, that's all
call if
right.
it's important. No
That's all
worries.
right. I got it. Sorry, I
I just don't know
apologize.
if I'm going to be so knowledgeable about theology, religion, and everything else, because it's all experience and kind of
Hey,
a mindset, right? Everybody
yeah,
has one. So, but yeah,
yeah.
what I'm getting at, what's your stand about destiny and things that are pre-planned? You have absolutely no control. Anything that happens, good or bad,
Yeah.
and otherwise, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's like being on the freeway, right? We're all going
In LA,
somewhere.
you have
Yeah,
15 lanes.
exactly.
That's
Uh,
not helpful at all.
uh, Eventually, you're going to get off the freeway because it has an end. Even if you don't want to get off, it ends somewhere, right? So we all have that common destiny. We're all going to die. What
Right.
happens in between birth and death, it's up to you. That's why we have free will. Free
Aha.
will,
Okay.
unless certain other creatures or humans, because there's the humans in the food chain here, uh, prevent us from reaching our own perception of what we want to do with our life. It
Hmm.
could be a drunk driver. Like, you're going to school, you're working hard, and say, I'm going to graduate. And next day you get hit by a drunk driver and you die, right? That was not part of your plan.
No, it was
That was
not.
not.
So
So,
what is that then? Are you given the specific amount of time to look above, make a decision how to save yourself and follow your path, or is it as intensive and invasive that there's nothing you can do about it? It's just as random as
yeah,
anything. Or it
yeah.
was pre-planned, like you were not meant to fulfill that path, it had to end. If you believe in reincarnation, whatever, depending on your
Mhm.
viewpoint,
Yeah.
it ends
I
here or you got to start somewhere else. So that's always something that I love to talk about because it's just fascinating.
Yeah, that is such a good question because I can be the first one to tell you, yes, I've been in situations that I got a second chance.
Mm,
I don't think I would have gotten the third one, but I definitely got a second chance. And once I got the second chance, it went in the right path.
okay.
It seemed like everything was kind of like, even if it was a 24-hour from the first chance to the second chance, or
Hmm.
if it was a 2-year gap, there seems to have been some sort of a
Shift.
holding pattern.
Hmm.
I would not achieve what I'm trying to achieve within that time period of the first and the second chance.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? There was like, you were like
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
moving, not progressing. Then
Mm,
once the second chance, even if it was 2-year gap, appears again, the cycle of it, you accept it, and then you go on a warp speed.
hmm.
Maybe time is trying to catch up with what you lost before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And of course, during those two years, for example, like in your case, with our rock and roll dynamic, of course, you go, holy crap, I'm stuck. What is this supposed to be? I'm going insane, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I could probably name a couple of those. I mean, pandemic being the latest one. Like, okay, waiting pattern. Okay, great. What's up next?
Cycles.
Somehow, yeah,
Cycle.
cycles. Somehow you have that. I just spit on myself because I get excited in discussion.
It happens all the
We're gonna
time
cut
to
that
me,
off.
yeah.
It's a live stream, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna like edit it.
It happens all the time to me.
It's rock and roll. Who the fuck cares? I mean, but it's interesting how, let's say, the balance between waiting and actually being in action versus the life path and the whole creation and aim of our destiny, because it kind of always comes back to, let's say, very early days and years of your life. I mean, what made you pick the bass and choose the bass? I mean, out of all instruments that maybe not necessarily would be interesting to a person, a young boy of Cuban descent, it's not
No.
something obvious as a career. I mean, mathematician, minor, many other things. So, like, where does it come from, for example? Like, do you remember a first moment of it finding you? Because I do recall some interviews and some talks you were talking endlessly about our favorite instrument, the bass. But do you remember any early signs, like this streak of consciousness that being a 1-year-old or 2-year-old being in a crib? Because I do, and I can tell you my story.
No. And you know what? I want to answer the question, but don't forget to remind me about cycles, because I want to get back into cycles.
Okay, noted.
Okay, so we're talking about me and the bass. Well, first of all, I grew up with Latin music. I remember as a child, like you're like going back to your memories, childhood memories. Going to sleep with the kids in the neighborhood outside, one by one, just gravitating towards a car that was parked in the streets. I was raised in Havana, and that's all I knew. Havana, Havana was it's a big city in Cuba. It's urban life, and so the kids, one starts going to a car, and we're talking 1950s cars, all made out of metal. So anywhere you bang,
I love those old cars.
Yeah, you chrome and metal and all these different sounds coming out of one vehicle that was parked. So the kids would start playing percussion on this. No talking, no singing, just them. One by one, they will add little riffs of percussion, parts, and that's what I grew up with. And it was really interesting because once I started playing rock and roll, of course, when I was playing rock in Miami, it was more the Latin community. So everybody, naturally, all the musicians play rock and roll, but with a Latin feel. Lot of back and forth. Yeah, you're a dancer. You understand that feel, that swing, right? And
I even danced salsa cubana for a second. Like, rueda is crazy. Well, like when the Cubanos enter, like everybody stops. It's just like insane. Okay.
It's not. I mean, they grew up with it. We grew up with it. But I say they because I'm not a salsa dancer.
I do realize you have a different career, but it's never too late for anything.
So so it wasn't until I started playing outside of the Miami area, like let's say in Fort Lauderdale, especially with Frankie Banali, who later on, 10 years later, became the drummer in Quiet Riot, and we recorded Mental Health record together. I met him in 1972, and we did the record in 1982. So there was this 10 years of us playing together. And he's the one that taught me the difference between having that swing. I mean, you still swing when you play rock, but rock is
very linear.
That on the beat, not behind the beat, in front of the beat, like I grew up listening to music. It was that flow. It was like a wave. It was not metronomic. And rock and roll, especially with the British invasion, which is what got me into rock and roll. Paul McCartney, one of the main architects of the bass.
Primarily.
It was all, he there's photos of him actually before he became the de facto bass player in the Beatles, because there was a guy named Stu Sutcliffe who was the original bass player. He left, and there was no bass player. And George and John did not want to play bass. So
Or
Paul
some.
said, "Okay, I'll play the bass."
Okay, let's try.
That's pretty much my story, and I would say the story of every bass player that of
Oh,
my
really?
generation. Oh yeah, no, we didn't grow
It
up
was a
wanting to be.
default. Yeah.
That was a default. Yeah, we all have some sort of a guitar, six-string guitar background in our musical vocabulary.
Mm.
I couldn't afford lessons, so I did not learn chords. I just pick up notes and little
By
riffs
ear.
by
Mm.
ear, which basically once I start, I how I started playing bass is I moved from my family moved from New Jersey back to Miami. I went to my block, the band. You have to join the band in your block. You cannot go across the street and join the other band in the other
Yeah,
block.
that's competition. That's a no territory
That's
already.
right. That's right. And then there was the battle
I
of the
know.
bands. Battle of the bands. You have to stick with your own
Yo conozco
block.
la regla. Yo conozco la
Yeah,
regla.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I walk in with an acoustic guitar, that my parents bought my brother and me from a Sears catalog, like a mail order catalog,
I know.
Sears.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. You got to start somewhere. I mean,
yeah. Well, nowadays it's the same thing. Yeah, I buy a
of
lot of
course,
stuff from Amazon and whatever.
it's just simple. Yeah.
It went full circle. So I walk in and I go, "Hi," introduce myself. My name is Rudy, and I want to join your band. So they see the guitar and they go, "No, we got too many guitar players. If you want to join, you got to play the bass." And I said, "What's that?"
What's that? Well, you rip the two low strings, and there you go.
Yeah, which I did. But they explained to me, they say, "Well, it's like playing a guitar solo during the whole song." And I thought, great, because I don't know chords. So
That's
this is
the
perfect.
best marketing for bass.
Yeah.
Like that's like a solo on guitar
Yeah,
throughout.
playing throughout the whole song. Really, it is. Yeah.
No way, that's how they sold it to you.
They sold it to me, and I bought it, and
That's perfect.
it's all bought and paid for, and here I
That's
am.
so awesome. Well, it's funny
Okay.
because actually that's how I started too. I mean, bass was the last love kind of to arrive. I mean, bass player, you name it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I did start on electric guitar immediately. No acoustic, nothing in between. And funny,
Yeah.
what I did not realize, I gravitated towards the beat, towards the low strings, towards the rhythm all the time. And I was years later when I was breaking down, let's say, Aerosmith riffs or something that I kind of started with. I was like, wait a minute, I was playing the bass parts on electric guitar because I always felt comfortable with the rhythm. I was never really a solo guitar player. Like if a solo came in, I was nervous and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to screw it up. So I kind of figured, nah, this rhythm is kind of more natural to me. And I love the trance and the ambience of it. That's why I love metal so much. Just like, ta, 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 you just take a pick and you kill it, right? So that was funny. So kind of second nature the moment I grabbed it. And actually, first one that I got was a fretless. I think it was like a PV bass with a complete amputated cutaway at the bottom. So it was so uneven, like the neck was tipping over. Like I didn't know what to do with it. On the body, it did not sit. When I was sitting down playing, it didn't work. So I figured, this is going to stand in my kitchen. And I swear to God, 2019, it stayed on a stand in my kitchen. I was looking at it every now and then because it was a custom made out of like paper mache, comic books, Superman, like Bart Simpson, whatnot. And it just kind of, yeah, it was interesting. It was there, but kind of not the moment. And then the real bass came in, which was like a reissue of a Black Beauty, no-name guitar somewhere from the Czech Republic that my friend dropped off. And I was like, ooh, okay, pandemic. What the hell am I supposed to do? I cannot do shows. I'm going to go nuts. So that's where it kind of like facilitated and made it solid as a marriage to stay, I think. So.
Interesting. Yeah, my signature Spectre basses are made in the Czech Republic, and they're
I
just
know.
outstanding.
It is outstanding because, I mean, it's just the history of the instrument is so long for once, and the technology have changed with carbon fibers and like, enforced plates and truss rods and whatnot. Is that actually the latest one, the red Spectre that I saw? That is your signature?
Yeah.
That is such a rockin' instrument.
Oh,
Wow.
it's great. It's great. It's great. But talking about technology, I also the technique of bass players around the world is mind-boggling. I think there has been more advancement in the last 20, 30 years for bass players technique wise
Mm.
than in any other instrument that I encounter on YouTube. I mean,
Okay.
guitar players are basically, I mean, I can see more development in the acoustic guitar players,
Right.
you know, a lot of hybrids of finger picking and flamenco styles, like
True. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Appalachian flamenco fusion,
Which
I
is
can see that.
which is interesting. So many guitar players that I either talk to or just like a bunch of my friends, they started with flamenco influences. Something that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that I actually learned, when was that?
Hmm.
2015, 16 on the Billy Idol tour. Steve Stevens
Yeah.
had actually a solid background in flamenco guitar playing. And
Mm-hmm.
then you just like the guy walks up on stage and he does this ovation crazy thing, and of course everybody's mouth dropped because that's why, like, all his
Yeah.
life I think his father it was played flamenco music, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
we are. So
But as far as the bass guitar, I mean, there's a lot of flamenco, influences and the finger pick because naturally bass players, you know, most of us play with our fingers to begin with. So there's always going to be that sort of leaning, like we can pick up a technique like that because we're limber with our fingers.
well, you're very known for your finger style because it's just insane. I mean, chops, I mean, basically your fingers, like compared to mine, I have small, relatively girly hands, but your fingers are like a pianist. So that the angles and the force that you can take out of that, it's just mind-boggling. I think we should do another metal podcast just purely on like breaking down that. You know what?
Uh,
I pick this
yeah,
green and violet, and it's just, it's my style. That's what
but
I
I
love and what I dig with. So
but from experience of all these years recording, and especially even more recording nowadays, I do more recording than I've ever had,
mhm.
and which means that I have more control over my tone. I hate it anytime that I have to go in a studio and I have to like struggle with the engineer. Sometimes it's magic, so we just plug in and it's there, the
Right.
tone in my head because I'm playing and I got this tone in my head and I brought this certain instrument because it's the tone that I think is suitable for the track, you know, and it's just a matter of getting the sound, the tone, and with a pick. If I want a pick tone, I play a pick, and I do that a lot because if I say, okay, the track needs this tone with a pick,
Yeah.
right? So I'll use that. Otherwise, it's like, okay, I'm going to use different techniques. Palm muting. I use the thumb a lot
Mm.
because here's what happens when you're playing with a pick. Most of the time it's downstrokes, right? Down, 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 or down, up, down, up. But you really want can,
Yeah.
can, 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 can. If you listen to Metallica, the constant down, right? It's one sound, down, 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 and they
It's
do that a
supposed to be.
lot.
It's supposed to
Yeah,
be this automatic gun
yeah,
straight
constant,
on. Yeah.
constant, constant, right? If you go down, up, up, it's a different sound than
That
going
changes
down, right?
everything.
So
Yeah.
we as finger players, we're playing up all the time, going
Mm.
bam, bam, because we're plucking up, right? So with me is sometimes, let's say if I want to do the finger style playing, I'll do the thumb and I do the finger, right?
Mm.
Bum, 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 and I can get like 16 notes with that swing,
Right.
which is the equivalent of playing like this or playing with a pick back and forth on one note on one string,
One
right?
last thing. Yeah.
But if I really want, there's nothing like a down, right?
There's nothing like a strong down.
But down, yeah, that's
That's
like
a bumper
boom,
sticker. I like it. There's
boom,
nothing like a
boom, right?
down.
So that I use my thumb. And to me, even if I really want to cut and be percussive, I use my thumb with palm muting
Yeah.
closer to the bridge. Then I got like, it's not
It's
a,
heavier.
it's
It
heavier.
gives that girth, yeah. And you have
Yeah.
control. I mean, I find I haven't been playing for the last 40 years, but the last couple of years very intensively. And I find palm muting is like the biggest control that you can have to open and let go the sound, or really like kind of suffocate it and keep it in place and as tight as you can. So it's all about the super fine details. I mean, And again, the other discussion that is interesting, are you a snob, Rudy, out of our last questions? Like pick versus fingers,
Oh
or you
no,
do not care, whatever serves the
like
song?
no, the track is gonna tell me what I should use. The
Right,
track, the song, the ways, not even the song, the way it was recorded,
right.
the other instruments, right? So I get a lot of songs that most of everything is recorded already.
Mm.
So basically, what I do is I just find what where I fit with my sound
And you fill it
organically.
up with what you need, and you know what's gonna work.
Yeah, well, I have a good well actually I audition my basses.
Hmm.
I audition them. I play different basses that first of all I'll have like five that I think okay this is the area,
Hmm.
right?
Go-to ones. Yeah.
And yeah, and then I just cut them down. Okay, I'm down to two basses, and I'll do a couple of passes, and then I'll settle on one. Yeah, that
Hmm.
takes me longer than to actually record a track.
For
Is
sure. Yeah,
finding
yeah.
out which one, and then I
Imagine how the bassists have to be stressed going in an audition led by you like that, because they all want to play. It's like me, and then no, sorry, today
yeah.
the Spectre goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Well, see, what happens is I have to be my own engineer, so I have to put my engineer hat of like what sounds best with the track, right? And then I get that sound, and then I become the bass player. Okay, the sound is
Nice.
done.
I
Then
love that.
play with it. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you know what? Since we have to wrap up, and I would love to spend hours with you, Rudy. So hopefully to be continued.
Oh, to be continued.
I'm going to
Yeah.
finish this segment off with the meme that I recently have. And the biggest fear and feeling of a bass player is when you go out of the recording studio, you're so satisfied with how you laid down your track, but the engineer then records the track in the middle of the night instead of you. I saw this as the latest meme. That was so terrible. My God, that's the biggest like.
It's yeah. I mean, I love engineers. I work with some of the best,
With all
but
due respect for all engineers, it's just,
oh, engineers. I
it's
mean,
just bullshit of the
they have
industry.
such a
But
tough job. I mean, they're trying to please
yeah,
everybody.
it
They,
ain't
they,
easy. It ain't
they're
easy.
like
But it's
they're like
fun as well.
politicians. They're like politicians. They're
Another bumper sticker. Oh my God. Okay, we gotta cut this short. I gotta write all of this down. Ladies
okay.
and gentlemen, Rudy Sarzo in discussion this morning. Coffee, stay metal, subscribe, check out everything that Rudy is doing, and see you next time, everybody. Thank you so